You are the salt of the earth. At 6:00 p.m., at the height of the century's worst winter storm, I put on my waterproof biking pants and jacket to go walking in the darkness. Rain was pouring down in sheets, and in the Presidio forest along the ridge, 60-knot winds tore through the Monterey Cypress and Eucalyptus trees. It sounded like a deafening freight train in the sky. And as the debris landed all around me, I felt afraid, very afraid. But I also felt a sense of awe in the face of such power and beauty in the presence of God. I could see no sign of another living soul except for a single light far offshore in 30-foot swells outside the Golden Gate. This week, I gradually began to understand the news that is coming out. Our seminary, the Church Divinity School of the Pacific, which we call CDSP, will be closing its classrooms for in-person learning and most likely selling their property, which lies across the street from the University of California, Berkeley. The university motto, Fiat Lux, means "Let there be light." And today, I want to begin by expressing what a great light our seminary has been for me during my whole adult life. Now, I remember going to Thursday evening community Eucharist there during the ferocious El Nino storms in my freshman year of college. As an 18-year-old, I absolutely loved the Episcopal Church, and Berkeley, with its 4 Episcopal churches, 2 breakaway churches, a university chaplaincy, a kind of Anglican newspaper called the New Oxford Review, and a seminary, all of it seemed like heaven to me. And I have very strong memories of studying in the Graduate Theological Union Library from the time it first opened. I remember my college chaplain, Peter Haynes. He would gather us to meet in the parking lot of CDSP to drive for my first retreat at the Bishop's Ranch. And let me tell you, the people I met in those years and in that setting, they profoundly shaped my faith as a guide to a compassionate, generous, beautiful, uniting, and thoughtful way of being. This faith opened me to the experience of people of different backgrounds, even of different religions and of no religion. This faith also grounded me in traditions that connect us to our deepest humanity. So it wasn't that long after all this that I was kneeling on the warm red carpet in the candlelight of St. Clement's Church in Berkeley, California, getting ordained as an Episcopal priest. And soon after that, I began participating in faculty clergy lunches. And I remember meeting John Cater there. He was the first person at that time introduced the idea of online learning. It was only a year after the beginning of the World Wide Web. And there he was talking about this online learning thing. For 20 years, I participated in the Pacific Coast Theological Society meetings at the seminary with Owen Thomas, Patricia Codron, Houston Smith, Herman Wachin, and dozens of others. I cherish my clergy colleagues who are educated at CDSP, and I cherish their teachers. I can see in my mind's eye the busy brick refectory at lunchtime, with students and teachers from across the country engaged in friendly talk on a fall day as the liquid amber trees outside the windows burst into an impossibly beautiful shade of red. So you may, from this, begin to get a sense for the heartbreak I feel about our seminary, and that with many others I'm mourning something that was great and was lost. And this brings us to one of Jesus' most important lessons about how to live, known in the Gospel of Matthew as the Sermon on the Mount. And let me briefly talk about the central elements of Jesus' teaching, and then introduce a psychologist and 2 theologians who give us further instructions into its meaning. Today we hear the second part of the Sermon on the Mount. So remember, the beginning part begins, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, those who hunger for righteousness, the merciful, the pure in heart, the peacemakers." And Jesus does not say that one thing leads to another, as if we had to somehow become poor in spirit so that we would be blessed by God. No, Jesus speaks to us. We are the people who mourn. We are the humble ones frustrated by injustice. We are the ones who are longing for goodness and mercy. And indeed, Jesus says this to us this morning. You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Now, the Greek word for you is plural. It involves all of us. It is imperative to notice that Jesus is not asking us to change who we are. We are already what we need to be. We do not have to become something entirely new. We just need to learn how to magnify the goodness that we already possess. And for this metaphor, Jesus chooses things that are in small quantities have a massive effect. A tiny bit of salt brings out the flavor of a large meal. You are that salt, enriching the banquet for everyone. A single candle flame can be seen from 1.6 miles away. It takes half an hour to walk the distance to that tiny light that might guide someone home. So again, Jesus is not saying that this is a cause and effect relationship, that by doing something good, you become blessed. It is not a manner of punishment or reward. You already are blessed, so make the most of it. In an often cited passage, Marianne Williamson writes, "Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. And we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others." Now, in 2009, I went to a seminar on Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication. It was a workshop that actually changed my life. I see things in a very different way as a result of that conversation. Rosenberg asserts that we all have a kind of light or energy or life that animates us. We have needs that we often do not understand for food, safety, love, etc. He says that instead of trying to compel others, to force them to do what we want, we should instead learn to state our need and then ask for help. We do this knowing that all human beings have a deep need to be of service to others. So Rosenberg's whole program begins with seeing the light in other people. And it requires that we learn to quiet the critical voice that judges others and ourselves. He recommends that instead of using judgment words like saying things like, "You're always late," or presuming that we know what another person is thinking, we should instead learn the gift of the question, the right question, which will open a person. We need to simply ask what that other person needs. Instead of an inner life in which we criticize ourselves, we need to ask ourselves what we need. Today at the Forum, I talked to my favorite teacher of all time, Margaret Miles, and here she is sitting in the front pew. And we talked about her newest book that she's writing right now on the 3rd century St. Augustine of Hippo. It's partly about how he changed his 4th century, that's right, 4th century. Heidi's giving me like special hand signals. 4th, not 3rd. He died in 354. Everybody needs to have somebody in the front row giving them signals to help them in their sermons. I strongly recommend it. Often we quote St. Augustine during the service, and what happens is we break the bread, and then the priest says something like, "Be what you see, receive who you are." And it's a moment that always strikes me in a very deep way. And it's kind of a riddle. the answer to the riddle is the body of Christ. Be the body of Christ, which you already are. Receive it. It reminds us that we are God's children. We are salt and light, even when we do not feel very close to God. So St. Augustine talks about the difficulty of believing in miracles and what our bodies will be like in the resurrection. And he says, according to my friend Margaret, that these ideas, they matter mostly in connection with how they influence the way we live right now. So she cites a prayer that Augustine addresses to God, and this is what he says. He says that we are not only instructed so as to see you, God, but also so as to grow strong enough to hold you. And the one who cannot see you for the distance may yet walk along the road by which he will arrive and see you and hold you. So to us, St. Augustine says, walk without fear. Run, but stay on the road. Do not stand still. Do not turn back. Do not get sidetracked. Any who find that they may have gone astray must return to the road and walk along it. And any who find they are on the road must go on walking until they arrive. The last thing I want to talk about is one of my favorite theologians of the 20th century, of our generation. His name is James Allison, and he's a gay English Roman Catholic theologian who's been very active in the Spanish-speaking and Portuguese-speaking world. The Stanford University professor René Girard deeply influenced him. Now, Girard taught that all human societies have what he calls the scapegoat mechanism. So we covet, that is, we want the things that other people have, and this leads to instabilities and social tensions, and these in turn are resolved by punishing or banishing an individual or group. So in other words, we fix our social problems by blaming other people. And according to both Allison and Girard, Jesus overturns the scapegoat mechanism. Jesus makes it possible for us to experience the world as the realm of God, a world in which all people are loved. So in my clergy group, I heard the following story about James Allison. For many years, he lived in Brazil, but not long after moving to Spain, the Brazilian bishop who he'd been under in Brazil began a long and ultimately successful process of removing Allison from the priesthood. That's called laicization. So now when James Allison was sitting in his garden in Spain and received a file that was full of this documents of him kicking him out of the church as not a priest anymore, he was naturally very upset. But then one day he was hanging around the house and he received a phone call. And the voice on the other end of the line told him that it was Francis, Pope Francis. And so Allison felt sure that it was his friends playing a trick on him. So he started asking the Pope particular questions. And over the course of the questions, he realized that it really was the Pope. And the Pope said to him, he said, James, I am giving you the keys, the power of the keys. I am reinstating you as a priest in the Roman Catholic Church. Now, as a gay man, Allison was himself scapegoated, but his light shines too brightly to be diminished. He does not hide, and I give thanks for him, for Augustine's reminder to stay on the road to God even when our Father seems so far off. I give thanks for Marshall Rosenberg's reminder that our critical inner voice makes it hard to see the light in others. But above all, I'm so grateful for the compassionate, generous, and thoughtful light of the people associated with our seminary, CDSP. They contributed to the faith that has guided me until this day. That night, a few weeks ago, when I was out in the storm and I encountered God, I was looking at that lonely light on the ocean. And it reminded me of one of the kids who was at my ordination. He was just being born at that time. His mother was a powerful attorney. His dad was a nuclear physicist. But William grew up to become the captain of a tugboat And I wondered if he was out there in the storm, if it was his light that was going to guide someone home that night. In the deafening freight train storm that surrounds us, your light shines in this way also. So give the gift of the question. Do not turn back. Be what you see. Receive who you are. You are the salt of the earth.